I call this meeting of the special meeting of the City of Ashland Planning Commission to order for June 24th, 2025. The Planning Commission is conducting in-person regular meetings. However, the ability to participate electronically is continuing. These meetings are via Zoom pursuant to state law. The public can find information on how to participate in Planning Commission meetings on our public notices, and directions on how to find the full meeting materials, applications, and staff reports are on the city's website and included in our public notices. I do note that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, we have 7 commissioners here, so we do have a quorum. And I'll start out with my announcement, which I joined with Brandon in making, that I want to thank Greg Perkinson for his outstanding service as a planning commissioner as he exits the commission tonight. He's leaving because he doesn't reside in Ashland anymore, and one of the requirements of being on the planning commission is that you do live here. And although I have invited him, and I think Brandon has also invited him to reapply to the planning commission when he moves back to town. So he will recuse himself from the public hearing this evening. So now is the time to celebrate and to say thank you to Greg and share cookies. And I brought some candy from France. So thank you, Greg, very much for all your service.
Oh, my pleasure. And yeah, I'm sorry I can't be there in person to enjoy both the company, the cookies, and the candy with you guys, but mostly the company.
Anybody else want to say anything or just want to eat?
Greg, it's a pleasure serving with you. This is Eric, and I've learned a lot from you, so appreciate your time. Thank you, and your service.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Greg, it's been a pleasure working with you the last couple of years here on the Planning Commission. I've always enjoyed what you've contributed in terms of comments and ideas, and you'll be missed, so thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. Appreciate it.
Susan?
So Greg, I think we joined the same month or something pretty close to that. And the learning curve wouldn't have been the same without you, because your thoroughness and your questions and your willingness to look at things from a perhaps different perspective than some of the rest of us has been really great and helpful. And I look forward to seeing you in other venues as we go forward.
Thanks, Susan. I appreciate that.
So, Greg, I would applaud your Zoom etiquette and your patience and perseverance to show up on camera in front of a large audience. I should say, every 2 weeks.
I don't think I'm even on. I'm gonna have to say it all again.
I think you are.
All righty. Anyways, I hope we get a chance to meet in person. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
And as Chair Werner said, Greg, I'm just anxious for you to move back to Ashland so we can see you across this dais yet again.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, let us know when you move back. Hi, Carrie.
Hi. I'll let you know when he moves back.
Okay. We expect an application to be forthwith presented to the mayor, so. Oh, thank you. Do we want to pass around the cookies now, or? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll initiate that.
It is. Yes.
Well, it's a better lead-in than let them eat cake. You know, that might not as, be well received.
Dinner water.
She's just gonna go with the water.
From the gallery?
Thank you, though.
John, you want
Oh, no, I'm fine, thanks.
any drinks?
So while we're distributing cookies in celebration of Greg, so he's tempted and can't have any, being remote, I could do staff announcements, Chair Werner, if you want to.
Go for it.
So the
Efficient use of.
the City Council at their prior meeting reviewed an appeal on 231 Granite Street, and the City Council received an appeal from neighboring property owners identifying 25 points or assignments of error related to the findings. Upon hearing the appeal, the City Council directed staff and the Planning Commission to review the findings and adopt more substantive findings or specific findings as opposed to comprehensive findings that that relate to the approval criteria more directly. In making that direction to come back to the Planning Commission for review and revision to the findings, they did affirm the Planning Commission's decision and clarify that they did not believe upon reviewing the materials that the Commission erred in any of the 25 grounds of appeal. So that will be coming back to the Planning Commission in August, either the 12th or the 26th. And just wanted to give you a heads up on that because it is still an action in process. So in terms of ex parte contacts, you may have been under the assumption that when it left the Planning Commission, it was done. But now that it's coming back to you, I just wanted you to be aware to avoid ex parte contacts on that action. And that is the primary announcement that I have related to this commission.
Anybody have any questions about ex parte contact or anything like that for the next 2 months?
No, I just have a quick question, Brendan. So when you say it's coming back to the commission, does that mean that we will be evaluating just the 25 points, or will we be evaluating the entire project?
Correct. The remand to the Planning Commission was not to reopen the public hearing. It was to review the findings and look at those findings in consideration of the points of appeal. So it is an opportunity to look at new draft findings and make changes to the findings that were previously adopted. And once adopted by the Planning Commission, the new findings would be the decision of the city, again, subject to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. But it is not a new hearing. There will be no new testimony. The record is still closed. So all the information in the record is what the findings have to reference.
So, Brandon, can they continually, if they can come up with reasons to continually appeal, can it be appealed over and over again?
The remand from the City Council affirming the Planning Commission's approval and asking for findings to be revised, the Planning Commission's action to revise those findings would be the final decision of the city. And so an appeal of that decision would not be to the City Council, but to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Okay, thank you.
Go for
Yeah,
it.
just one more quick question, Brandon. Those 25 points of error related to the findings, where can we find those right now?
We'll be preparing a packet for the commission to forward, but you could look, if you were curious, at the City Council's most recent meeting packet. They're all contained within that,
Great,
as
thanks.
is the full 282-page record, so quite a bit to read through, but you've seen it once.
Excellent, thanks, Brandon.
One more question. How do we prevent this from happening in the future? I mean, was it kind of a sloppy submission by the applicant or their staff on? I mean, we did find quite a few errors. Is that what this is pertaining to?
So this application was revised a couple times through the application process, and I think doing that always adds complexity to an action. So in terms of I don't know that there is a mechanism by which the Planning Commission could be assured that a decision of the Planning Commission was not appealable, because that's a right of any impacted party to appeal a decision. The question being is, are those appeal points substantiated? The City Council, upon review, did not find that they were, but nonetheless, because of the potential appeal of that decision to the state, felt there was an opportunity to look at the findings and have the Planning Commission take a closer look at those and see if the existing record had information to substantiate it. In terms of trying to substantiate findings going forward on decisions that the Planning Commission makes, if there is a section of the record that the Planning Commission is referencing, as an example, and I won't use it to this project specifically, but for instance, if the Planning Commission makes a determination that an applicant contains a geotechnical report and therefore meets our hillside ordinance, for more detailed findings to say, and on page 13 of that geotechnical report, it states that the stability of the soil is adequate to accommodate the footings of the house. That's the more specificity that I think answers the question when it gets appealed to a city council or to LUBA.
So Brandon, if I was hearing you correctly, when the findings are produced, we just need to have better references to the packet material or the plan material.
Yeah, it's both helpful when the findings are produced and in your deliberations for the allowance of preparing the packet.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Brandon? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have approval of April 29th minutes, May 27th minutes, and the June 10th minutes. Anybody have any corrections or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Thanks, Chair Werner. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as shown in the packet.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Public forum. If people in the audience would like to speak to the Planning Commission on an item that's not on our agenda, please fill out one of the pink forms and let Michael know, and he'll bring your slip over to me, and this would be the time to speak. I don't see anybody. Okay, we have nobody who's here for public forum. That means we're moving on to type 3 public hearings. And Greg, are you going to bow out now?
I am. Thank you. And have a great evening.
Thank you. So this is a type 3 public hearing, and a type 3 public hearing is a legislative action with a public hearing before the Planning Commission, after which the Planning Commission makes a decision, and it makes the decision that it makes is a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision. This hearing is on PA-L-2025-00016, and it's a request for adoption of the 2025 Southern Oregon University Facilities Master Plan as an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan, amendments to the city's land use ordinance, and amendments to the city zoning code. Additionally, this action includes proposed zone changes for properties identified on the proposed zoning for transferred properties map. The site that this will cover is generally along Siskiyou Boulevard in the Southern Oregon University District. The applicant is Southern Oregon University. The property owner is also Southern Oregon University. And the comp plan designation is Southern Oregon University District. And zoning is SO, which is Southern Oregon University. I will now ask the commission if anybody has a conflict of interest with this application, and if any commissioner has had ex parte contact with respect to the proposed zoning changes. Commissioner Herron?
No conflict of interest, no ex parte.
Commissioner Kincaid?
No ex parte contact and no,
Conflict of interest?
right, thank you. Got no conflict.
McCracken Jen?
No conflict of interest, no ex parte visits. Ex parte or site visits.
Physically here? She is. She'll be speaking in person. Okay, so does she want to go first? She is. Okay. Commissioner Marr?
No conflict of interest, no ex parte, no site visit.
Commissioner Phillips?
No ex parte and no conflict of interest.
And I also have no ex parte contact and do not have a conflict of interest. So I will now open the public hearing, and I will acknowledge the receipt of written testimony to the commission by Janine Grizzard, Chris Swan, Amy Swan, and Elise Emder. Due to particular circumstances, I'd like to ask the commission's permission to allow Janine Grizzard to speak first. She has a presentation for us. Is that okay with you? Okay.
Where do I stand?
Over there,
Over where?
in the podium?
I stand here?
Yes. Oh, there's no microphone. Oh,
That's okay, I'm an actor, I can be heard. Sure. My name is Janine Grizzard, I live on Roca Street. Within SOU's permit application, the April 4th proposed finding of fact states, SOU has sought input and communicated with stakeholders, the city, and our community. We have created a website to take input, conducted multiple open forums for stakeholder input, etc. I live at 698 Roca Street, which is one house away from the disc golf park that occupies the Roca properties that are proposed in the application to be rezoned and sold to a commercial developer. I am known to university management, having dialogued numerous times about the sale of 668 Roca Street, which lies between me and the park. I am a significant stakeholder, and yet no one from SOU reached out to advise me of open forums or a website. Which leads to my primary point. Removal of the disc golf course at Roca Park is a decision that impacts not just Roca Street or Ashland, but the entire valley. And yet this is a notably unpublicized conversation. Where is the newspaper headline? SOU proposes to sell disc golf course for housing. Where is the public poll on a city website? There are other courses, but according to discgolf.com, only 2 are year-round and public. SOU Roca Park and the Cove at Emigrant Lake, and online reviews for the Cove are largely poor. The city of Ashland has a proclaimed goal of wanting to attract younger residents. A big part of attracting and retaining them is not just housing, but the free recreation that goes with it. Our parks, bike trails, and this disc golf course. Putting an end to it conflicts with the city's professed goals. On a personal note, I have lived in my house 19 years. At least 3 of us, in the distance I can toss a ball to, have remodeled our houses with our own hands. We are dug in. To put housing next door, I thought it was going to be apartments, would compromise our quality of life and property value, and I was sold my house in 2006 based on an arboretum that SOU fundraised for off of my neighbors. I suggest that SOU's proposed permit be divided. The Henry Street properties separated out from the Roca Street properties. Sell and develop the Henry Street ones first, since they are closer to commercial areas, and I drove by them, they're all boarded up and derelict. See if the multifamily housing units are built and occupied in our emerging economy, and then return, if necessary, with a proposal for Roca Street in a few years. But for now, at least, hold off until proper advertising can be undertaken so that the community stakeholders can actually weigh in on the import of the disc golf course, which is also the best kid snow hill in the winter. And my husband is on hospice with possibly 2 weeks to live. I told him about this, and his first thought was, does that mean they will cut down our great big redwood tree? There is a massive redwood tree in Roca Park that is a city landmark and must be preserved. Thank you for your attention.
Please do not clap for the speaker. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I have to return to my husband. Thank you for your attention. Good night.
Okay, let's move on to the staff report. Derek, will you make the presentation?
Sure, and I apologize in advance for the technical difficulties I'm expecting. We're having a hard time getting it to work. Just to sort of give you a background, Oregon statewide planning goal 2, land use planning, in chapter 197 of the Oregon revised statutes both require that state agencies, including universities, go through a master planning process with the city they're located in order to ensure that their development plans comply with local comprehensive plan and land use regulations. So to that end, the city has adopted, I believe, 3 versions of a master plan for SOU since 1990. This will be the 4th. Moving ahead, you've seen this a number of times before in study sessions. The most recent one back in April for the council. Tonight, we're having a public hearing looking for your recommendation on the master plan and its implementing ordinances. And then this would go to the city council for a first reading and public hearing on July 15th. So just to sort of give you some background on the master plan, the 2010 master plan, which I think you may be familiar with a number of the projects, included renovation of the theater arts building, identified a faculty village of faculty housing south of Science Works, which has now instead been modified to be the farm as a center for sustainability. There was also replacement of the McNeil Pavilion with the new lithium motors pavilion and student rec center. 2 residence halls were constructed along with a new dining hall, and the JPR radio facility was relocated from the planned location in Ashland and Walker into the new theater arts building on Mountain. And then just to go through kind of pictures to remind you of kind of planning commission interaction with the last master plan. We did a tour at your 2013 planning commission retreat of the new residence halls and the dining hall. In 2018, the commission toured, or maybe 2016, the McNeil Pavilion renovation at your annual retreat. And then I believe also 2018, we looked at the new theater building. And here you see what was there at the time of plan adoption, the rendering at the bottom, including the new renovated theater and the JPR piece there at the left, and the actual theater in place that you all toured. This was the location of originally at the corner of Ashland Street and Walker Avenue. This was the concept plan illustrated for the JPR building, so you can see sort of a concept design that included a rather high radio tower as part of that plan, which has now kind of left that piece up in the air. And then again, the Center for Sustainability and the farm just south of Science Works on Walker is proposed to be rezoned to R3, which is a high-density multifamily residential zoning. And then some properties along Roca, Madrone, and Oregon down here in blue that are proposed to change to R175. And just as a note, those properties in blue were shown in one of the notices that went out as being changed to R3, and that was incorrect. In that notice, it's corrected, I believe, in all your packet materials, but I think a number of people here are concerned about that incorrect zoning designation shown in the notice. These are proposed to change to R175, which is a single-family residential zoning with 7,500 square foot minimum lot size. The proposal by the university would be to change the zoning of those properties so that with sale to private parties, they would be subject to this new zoning until they're sold. While they're in university ownership, they would remain subject to the zoning regulations in the overlay for the Southern Oregon University District. But I think my understanding, the applicant will speak more to it, is they intend to sell those properties, I think, fairly quickly to raise some money. And sorry for the technical difficulties and delays. In addition to that zone change that's associated with the master plan adoption, there's a number of code changes that are outlined in your packet. The first of those is changes to chapter 15, which get to the city's demolition and relocation ordinance. And the proposal was to have that no longer apply to university properties. The university is subject to state requirements for demolition, and demolition and redevelopment is subject to the legislature making decision. So having them also be subject to local regulations that require they have a plan for redevelopment in place prior to demolition, and essentially making sure the legislature does everything in it for the best after them seems inappropriate when they're subject to state review, and they'll still meet our demolition, relocation, and rediversion plan requirements in the code. They also are proposing to change chapter 18.3.6, which is the overlay zone regulations for the university district. The number of pieces there being changed, including recognition that the water resources protection zone regulations would apply to the campus. Also, the areas within 50 feet of privately owned property would be subject to type 2 site design review with a public hearing before the commission, rather than a conditional use permit, which is the current requirement, and requiring conditional use permit approval for any building greater than 70 feet. The current code requires conditional use permit approval for any building greater than 40 feet. The regulation changes proposed also include having the university not be subject to our current sign regulations, but instead subject to a campus master plan. And to put that in context, our current sign regulations are really designed to apply to a single business with a specific business frontage, and not so much to an entire campus. So the signage that's been done typically in the past has been through a conditional use permit, which allows government signage for a public purpose, but it means that the replacement of any sign requires a conditional use permit process. This would just clarify signage requirements on campus and remove them from the sign code that we currently enforce for businesses. There would also be clarification in AMC 18.5.2 that any building on campus greater than 15,000 feet would be reviewed through question I think that had come up at the study session was whether that change was appropriate if they were relying on a contract arborist versus, the Parks Department has a staff arborist who oversees kind of long-term vision of implementing tree plans for the Parks Department versus potentially different contract arborists that could be used on the university campus. So I expect that's an item you'll want to discuss further. Currently, projects within 50 feet of private property are subject to a conditional use permit. These are some questions for the commission to consider as we move forward tonight. Within 50 feet of a private property, they're currently subject to a conditional use permit, which gives some discretionary review for compatibility with the surrounding neighborhoods. As proposed, the university is asking that instead of a conditional use permit, those projects be subject to type 2 site review, which would provide notice to properties within 200 feet and a public hearing before the commission with potential for appeal to the council. So a question to consider as you think about your recommendations and whether you're comfortable with a less discretionary review procedure. Also, are you comfortable with exempting solar arrays over parking lots from land use review when they meet specific criteria? And what the university has kind of put forward here is an illustration of the typical installation that they have in mind. These are going to need to be no more than 25 feet tall, maximum length of 120 feet, maximum width of 45 feet. They would be installed in a painted steel canopy. What the language is proposing in the master plan for you would be that they be exempt from site review when they meet those requirements and when they are within, or they have a neighboring private property to the north that they comply with the solar ordinance, that they don't impair vehicular access, and that they obtain building and electrical permits from the city. And as written, that would allow them to be subject to staff review at building permit without separate action to come before you. I think a thing to think about there is that site review typically is looking at building orientation and a number of other things that don't really apply to a canopy like this, when this canopy is one of the options that you choose from as a required treatment for a parking lot when it's over 7 spaces. So it's a code requirement. They kind of laid out the parameters of the proposed installation, and if you're on board with that, it needs to be subject to site review. And the master plan also does include this map, which identifies those parking lots. You can see in the orange boxes, those parking lots that are proposed to have solar arrays installed over the long term. Another question to consider tonight is whether you're comfortable with the proposed height allowances in the master plan before you. Generally, structures are described as being 4 stories. The development that would replace the Cascade residence hall that was recently demolished would be 5 stories. The University District property previously identified for JPR is proposed to be up to 9 stories or 110 feet, which is as tall as the tallest building in Ashland, the Ashland Springs Hotel. Any building over 70 feet would require conditional use permit approval as proposed in the master plan currently. I also put forward a question which is largely based on previous draft that I think the applicants can respond to in their presentation in terms of whether you support exemption for the maximum parking requirements. I think most of the projects that they described have been revised to speak to complying with the parking requirements while considering that in light of the overall parking requirement of campus, which generally speaks to the number of students they're accommodating. Also, question to consider is whether the commission supports the exemption from parking lot landscaping and tree standards based on the planned placement of solar canopies over parking lots. Would the commission prefer that exempted parking lots provide parking lot trees and movable planters, which can remain in place until solar arrays are installed, or providing some measure of perimeter landscaping, or providing for some delay in planting to allow for planting and primary issues and questions we thought should consider. Staff would recommend that you convey a favorable recommendation on the master plan to council in support of adopting and also adopting the associated implementing ordinances, but incorporating the recommended changes that come out through tonight's discussion. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or show any of those slides again.
At this point, does anybody have any questions?
I don't know if this is a question for you, Derek, or for the university. Is there a timeline that has been established for the solar array installations?
I think that would be better for them.
Okay.
I'm not aware of a specific timeline.
All right, great, thanks.
Russell?
Thanks, Chair Werner. Derek, would you, thanks for the presentation. Real quick, would you give me just a brief overview of how parking maximums are currently calculated?
The parking maximum are laid out in the code for specific uses. With the climate-friendly and equitable communities goals, we got rid of minimum parking requirements, and we kept generally the same maximums, which were whatever had been the previous requirements with an additional 10%. In some cases, it went a little beyond that, but that was sort of the guideline.
And is that typically different from zone to zone?
It's different from use to use. And the university is fairly unique because I think the university parking numbers were originally based on a number of students on campus. So, and that can be looked at campus-wide rather than an individual parking lot. Speaking to some use, it's the overall parking requirement for the campus and how it's provided around the entire campus.
So if I hear you correctly, the university has its own parking maximums for use?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Chair Werner. Thanks, Sarah. Quick question. You had mentioned that there's some redundancy in the code for demolition and relocation between local and state. Did you actually look and compare and say, is absolute parity?
I did not look and see that there's absolute parity. Our code has written a lot about keeping things out of the waste stream, and there are similar requirements and demolition debris diversion requirements in the state. But we also have a requirement that they demonstrate, looking at sort of the market for real estate, that there's not a financially feasible reuse of the property, keeping the building in place versus demolishing it. And in this case, I think the university is not really subject to those market conditions because they're being driven by what the legislature is willing to let them do and fund. So in a sense, I think it's duplicative to have a review process locally when they have to go through that state review.
Are those fixed solar panels or are they tracking?
I believe they're fixed, but the applicants could speak to that for sure.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep.
I have a question.
Carrie?
Derek, you said in your questions to the commission if we were comfortable with this and various things. If, and this is my own lack of understanding, if they have to go through a conditional use permit to go over 70 feet tall, and yet there's already consciousness that there's potentially a building that's going to be 110 feet tall. Once it comes before us as a conditional use, what is the criteria for saying yay or nay after they've already potentially put a lot of time and energy into designing something that's 110 feet tall? Because my experience of conditional use permits is that we can, we have input, but denying it is not necessarily a way to go. So I'm just wondering at the wording in that question from staff.
I mean, the conditional use permit criteria would typically be comparing what's proposed to the target use of the zone. So you would look at, the difficulty with the university is that you're looking at the educational uses detailed in the plan. So I mean, you'd be looking at that as well as architectural compatibility with the surrounding commercial development.
Well,
But it's,
yeah.
it's not an easy comparison for the university. I think that's a big part of why they're asking to do site review as a type 2 hearing for those properties kind of on the perimeter of campus rather than conditional use permit.
But you isn't that the question you asked, is that, are we comfortable?
I think,
with-
yes, are you comfortable with both with the conversion from conditional uses for uses that are within 50 feet of private property? And are you also comfortable with that potential for something coming before you that would still be subject to conditional use that's 110 feet tall and 9 stories at that one particular gateway site?
Yeah, so maybe it's just comfort, okay,
Yeah.
I don't mean to struggle, but, and maybe I'll just, if no other commissioners have an issue with it, I'll just let it go. And I have one more comment, which is that the whole thing about a staff or contracted arborist needs to have the word licensed added to it when they're talking about review or reporting annually what's going on with the tree plan. Or maybe that should be stuck in discussion. I'm sorry if I'm out of turn.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Derek? Okay, thank you very much. The applicant, Alan, would you like to come forward and make a presentation? Or Rob, or both?
And let me get this, we're having technical difficulties, so I can get this set up for you.
Thank you.
While Derek's doing all the tech, thank you for inviting us here again tonight. Presentation and the base material hasn't changed substantially since our joint study session with the council in April. So myself, Alan Harper, the chief planner on the project, and Rob Patridge, counsel for the university, have been leading this charge. And we appreciate the opportunity to come and answer any questions. When Derek masters the tech, we'll go through some of the slides that we've talked about before briefly, but really want to focus on any of the questions that the commission might have, the comments from staff, and then reserve some rebuttal time.
Get it to go up to presentation, so you just have to arrow down through.
Okay. And Sydney's here too, who's like a co-applicant kind of on the.
Yes, you want to explain that?
Yeah, so up on Roca Street, there was a parcel of property that the university sold that was a single-family residential home. It was discovered afterwards that it's still zoned SOU property. So the university agreed with the city as we brought that through with the master plan that could then be released as the single-family home that is currently here. Sydney Dreyer is the attorney in the back for the homeowners up there, and just wanted to make available if there were any questions that you had of her. Sid, did you want to say anything just quickly or not?
Alan, you can go ahead. I filled out a sheet.
Okay, great.
And that's really the impetus for the zoning of transferred map and working through that process. I mean, the university can transfer out property at any time. The question really is what can the buyer do with it, and how do they know what the zoning is going to be? And just the confusion, the uncertainty. One of the first things we worked with staff when we started this process a year ago was, let's come up with a system that we don't end up with that problem in the future. Go ahead, Rob.
So we can go ahead and walk you through kind of some quick slides. I think you've seen parts of these as part of the study session, so throw up a red flag if we need to slow down on them, and happy to answer any questions on them, but realizing it's late and don't want to take everybody's time. You know, I think as we shared with you, SOU has changed pretty substantially since its last master plan. The university is now its own independent agent, as opposed to, it used to be under a university chancellor system in the state where all the universities are together. So now it has its own independent board. In addition to that, That's changed a lot of the way the university is funded today, and you may have all seen headlines related to what's going on at SU right now, and we're about to make a $5 million budget cut, which is 35 positions or more, based upon what we were able to get state funding-wise and what's happening in universities across the country related to enrollment and enrollment cliffs and other things. So SU is facing those same things. The factors that have changed really are our students have declined. The number of beds have declined on campus. SOU has the largest deferred maintenance of any university in the state at 22%. So we're working on projects, and hopefully as the legislature ends, we will have another project for creative industries on the table. And then our parking spaces have declined because, in terms of the number of permits, because as universities have shifted to do more online learning, and that has become a more popular hybrid method of teaching, our parking permits have gone down. We've still maintained the number of permits. So we can walk you through a little bit of the detail on each of those. You can see that from 2009, we had on-campus students at 4,191. Today we have 2,849 in terms of students. So you can see that, we're down 32%. We have a total number of students down 1,352, and we have a higher number of students choosing the online option, which is what I shared just a minute ago. The SOU housing has changed substantially. As you're aware, and seen before, the Cascade complex, which was one of our major dormitory complexes on campus, had aged out. If you've been on campus or seen campus lately, it was a phenomenal and exciting and quick demolition effort. Now the big building that was there is now kind of a field, and we are looking at kind of senior students and a potential residence hall there. We have Green Springs, which is aged out pretty much. The HVAC systems and systems there that's the big concrete building, are not really, they're only seasonal. We can keep people in during shoulder seasons, but either when it gets hot, we don't have AC in a lot of those units, even though we've tried to do like some window air conditioners just to keep our summer conference things going. And then then we've got Suzanne and Cox Hall, so we've got a lot of, and then we've got Shasta McLaughlin, which is the brand new buildings that we had on campus. So, and you guys toured those, it sounded like, as part of your planning commission tour, I guess, as part of your, so you got to see some pictures of those earlier. In addition, the parking at SOU, we have 1,788 spaces, but our parking permits have declined to 18% in the last 3 years. And bicycle parking has slowly increased. We now have 13 shelters and 280 bicycle spots for students, but students never have a problem trying to get bicycle parking, or, and we always get people saying it's not the most convenient spot to park necessarily on campus, or park my bike sometimes. But if we go to a bigger city, though, we have very walkable opportunities to park and bike. Sometimes it may not be right next to the academic building you want to be, but it's a short distance away. So those are kind of the things that we have on parking. Our upcoming projects, we have the senior student housing project. The community will have an opportunity in early July. We have 2 vendors. We're about to do a public announcement this week and put up a website related to 2 vendors. So that's kind of exciting. We're looking for a development partner to come do that. So that will be in early July. So we will share that out with the community and get some community input and let people take a look at who those people are later on this week. We have the Creative Arts Building. The Creative Arts Building is a $41 million project that we were number 2 on the legislative list of university projects to fund. That will upgrade ADA and all of our theater building, and also put a digital media center right on the front. We're in the top 30 in the country in terms of film schools, according to Movie Maker magazine. And SOU, and we have, I think, over 20% of our student credit hours are in the digital media. And we're fond of saying that, from everyone from Main Street to Wall Street needs to know how to do digital media. That's just the world we live in. We have a strong student interest there. And that has passed out of the Ways and Means Subcommittee today, and passed out of full Ways and Means at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And it is going to be on the Senate floor at 10 or 10:30 tonight for that project. So SU is very excited about opportunities that go, but it's not over till it's over. The governor signs it, so we're cautiously optimistic. So that's an exciting project there. We have Native Nation spaces and are trying to figure those out today, and getting a lot of excitement about those. The University District building is the tall tower building that we envision and would love to do. Whether it pencils in Ashland or not is going to be a different issue, and how we look at that. So we are going to look at how we develop that and what makes sense, and what gives Ashland housing that it needs, and what gives our students housing that they need, and what diversifies the university's revenue. And then the solar projects you asked about, and you saw some renderings earlier, and here's some other renderings related to, kind of what those might look like. There was a question, I think, whether those were fixed, or whether we're gonna put those kind of on those strackers that move around. I don't think that we're fully decided, and the solar technology continues to change. And I think President Bailey's committed to be the first 100% daytime solar of any university in the country. We are continuing to careen down that path on a nice pace. I think when President Bailey arrived, we were at 3%, and we're now at 17%. And the students have put money aside to be able to do that. But we are facing significant grant headwinds to be able to make those projects work on a match basis. We just had one of our projects held up from the Make America, Buy America kind of stuff, because we couldn't buy some of the component parts that we needed to do it, so we couldn't use part of the federal money as part of that opportunity as a grant match. So, we are continuing to be creative, and we are continuing to be, resilient in the face of everything that we are facing. But we still have a strong commitment by the administration and our board of trustees to move that forward. So we're very, very excited about to keep trying to do that. But we don't have specific dates, because we don't have state. If we had nice state funding that was stable, or federal funding, we would know. But it's very opportunistic in terms of what grants are available and how we're going to do this creatively. So we're continuing to do those, and always trying to catch that technology to get the most kilowatt hours we can get out of those solar projects. So I think that's what we have. And
I'd like to
Alan?
back up just a hair for everybody who's here tonight to just remember kind of our general approach. Really what we've done is we've tried to treat this not as investing a lot of time in charrettes, envisioning things like the JPR, building you saw the rendering of, that never came to be, and all that time that got invested 25 years ago in that. We've really tried to focus and lean into the projects that we know are coming, and the places the university has been successful. The farm at SOU projects we know that are coming. The Creative Arts Building Rob talked about, critical for the university and our future success, we know are coming. The softball field on the athletic side, and really that pedestrian promenade going from Raider Village to the softball field. The things that we really have some concrete idea. We know the reason for it, we have a vision for it, we have plans for it, and it's funded. We've really tried to stick hard to those. In the other places where we've talked about the development code and future development areas, Some also Rob talked about the Native Nations gathering areas, the University District property at the corner of Walker and Ashland, and really to some degree this Cascade project as new housing or a new community on campus because it's not funded, it's not designed. Really our goal in those areas has been, how do we set up a master plan that looks to the future of what might be possible in these 10 years, knowing that we don't have a design yet, and we don't want to invest the time right now in designing it until we get through this process, and then we come back with a plan to you. Rob touched on the Cascade Community Plan. Just reiterate what Derek said about the Roca properties, that they'll be R17, which is what all the property up there is. We didn't want to do anything more intense than what's there. I've lost more than a couple of Frisbee discs on that 9th hole, but my understanding is the university isn't doing away with disc golf or inviting the community on, but obviously if that transfers out, the canyon is still protected. You know, the slope there, the riparian zone there, there's so many protections in place. It would be completely inappropriate to have an R3 or an apartment use there. I think really, as we've discussed in the past at the study sessions, what we would love to see happen is somebody take those lots, own them, and locate homes where it would be appropriate up there. And obviously the riparian and the steep slopes will remain. The maximum parking I wanted to touch on just briefly. The university, as Rob talked about, with the amount of available parking spaces, the reduction in requests for students to park, I think we're definitely in a different area or a different time. Most of the universities that I know are overparked. We don't have any issue with the maximum parking applying under the code as it is today. And I think in the revision from the first time we did a study session to then before we got to the joint session with the council in April, we did revise that to clarify that we know we have to comply with maximum parking standards the way they're written now. We don't know exactly what those will be because we don't know the makeup of the use. But when we've looked at what those potential future developments are, whether it's Cascade or the University District property, there's not really space there. It wouldn't make sense to build more additional parking. So we're very comfortable, as comfortable as you can be without having a plan or a use yet, but knowing that those maximum parking standards are going to apply. So just to clarify that we don't have any issue with that. Derek talked about the water resource protection zones applying, which we understand and we believe are appropriate. The sign code will be a big improvement. Commissioner Concaron's completely right that that was supposed to be licensed arborist. I thought in the actual code language, maybe it didn't make it to the summary, but our draft code language, I believe, is licensed arborist, and that's always been the intent. On the parking lot treatment for solar, the last comment I'll just make, our intent is to do solar, as you've talked about, and really lean into that sustainability. I think the only confusion has been if putting in those solar arrays would trigger parking lot standards that go with new parking lots. The university isn't intending on building any new parking lots. I think we have parking lots covered. Well, we have enough parking lots. Getting them covered is one of the issues. So the only bit of clarification I think that's needed is that the solar arrays would not trigger the new parking lot standards. If we did build a new parking lot, we don't have any issue with the current standards at the time that got built would apply. Whether we can meet that with all the necessary things, whether it's planting, whether it's tree canopy, whether it's solar canopy, but we understand if the university did new parking, we would comply with those standards. I think that addresses the staff comments or questions or discussion points, so we wanted to kind of front load those, available for any questions you may have, and also available to respond to any of the other comments here tonight.
Commissioner Moore?
Thank you, Chair Brenner. Thanks so much for your presentation and for the follow-up. I'm really sympathetic to the challenges, budgetary challenges that the university is facing. It would be helpful to the degree that you're able to share some of the impact that some of these code changes and and planned improvements and sale of property are going to have on the budgetary shortfall? I don't know how much you're able to disclose, but
Sure.
yeah.
Happy to share. There's three major pieces of property that the university is planning on putting up for sale in the near term, and maybe one single family residence. The property that we put up originally already is the parking lot on Mountain Street, right across from the old university president's home. That lot was never getting used hardly at all. We made the decision to put that lot up for sale. We've put every piece of property we've put up for sale recently. And all these related to these, the request to kind of have springing zoning, for lack of a better term. We've put out an RFQ. We've put it available publicly. We've sent it to realtors and developers and all kinds of people. We got multiple bids on that particular piece of property, and that one is currently under contract. And the contract's contingencies, as we put in the bid documents, were a sample contract, which made the sale of that contingent upon the approval as R2 zoning by this commission and the council. So that's all public and transparent as what we've done. I can't share with you the bid prices, obviously, and the university did do its due diligence in terms of getting a full-blown appraisal from a commercial appraiser related to the three pieces of property we were putting up for sale. So we knew what appraised values were versus what the offers were, but we do have that one under contract. The larger piece of property, which was the R3 zoning, which we talked about, we refer to it as the Henry Street properties. It went out for bid. There was an RFQ that was put out. We had responses to that RFQ. It ended June 12th. We are in the process of negotiating to put that one under contract, and believe that'll go under contract probably this week. Then we have been waiting on the Roca Street properties related to, there is a Fern Street, there's a city has the right of way on the Fern Street piece. In talking with the city has initiated the vacation on Fern Street. That is not part of this, planning commission piece, so I don't want to pretend to the audience or to anybody else it is a separate action. But we are waiting until that vacation is completed before we put that one up for sale. And again, that will go up for sale as a request for proposal. We'll get bids. We'll leave that open for probably a period of 30 days. But all those things, the university does not want to have to sell one-time properties to make ends meet. That is not our goal. The goal of our board of trustees, as they put forth and allowed the sale, was to actually put this into reserves. The university has the lowest amount of reserves of any university in the system. And we realize that, and our board of trustees realizes that, and we have like 8 days of cash on hand as reserves. And that is not a way to run a university. And President Bailey and the board have worked pretty collaboratively to try and make that happen so that there is longer term stability for the campus and for the community. As the community's largest employer, we think that that's important too. And so having proper reserves and fiscal responsibility is super important. And part of the reason that we made the changes too was that the way universities are funded as a result of 10 years ago, approximately, the universities all went on their own. We don't fund like dormitories and other things that traditionally used to get funded by state funds anymore. So we're looking for P3 partners and doing those kinds of things. And as the university morphs and evolves and students take more classes online or decide that they want to come back to a traditional classroom, we want to be ready and prepared to serve the needs of our region. And so that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing and trying to get on a strong financial footing and stability as we currently downsize the university now, and the board has asked by July 31st that we put out a recommendation to the university board to cut $5 million, which are positions. 85% of our budget is personnel. So there's other places to go find those funds without having an impact on personnel. So that's kind of, does that answer your question?
Pressing as that
Yeah, it's depressing, but I think it's important, and I'm glad you asked it because I think it's important for the public to know. So,
Commissioner Herron?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. While we're talking about deal points on this, is it the SOU's intent for these properties when they are transferred that they're at an arm's length deal? And is there any intention for SOU to encumber those properties for certain type of developments that they want and not be open to just R2 or something else? And then would also SOU, if it's at an arm's length deal, would they consider selling the Roca Park to the highest bidder? And if the highest bidder wanted to keep it as a disc frisbee area, golf area, would you allow that to happen?
So the answer is we have had lots of creative people come to us on the first two properties. Everything from the university giving them to put it into a trust for free to the highest bidder. And the university has an obligation to the citizens of the state of Oregon to sell to the highest bidder. And we are not putting restrictions and haven't put any restrictions on the other two pieces of property currently. And I don't envision that we would. And to answer your ultimate question, if a consortium came forth and it was a consortium for disc golf and they wanted to buy the property and they were the highest bidder, then that would be, we would sell to the highest bidder if that's what the case was. So we're like I said, we're looking for opportunities to build reserves. If the city came to us and said we have X amount of dollars and we want to build a park, and the city wanted to make it a park, but at this point in time, it doesn't make sense for the university to continue to keep it and maintain it and do the things that it does, and it's better in somebody else's hands, and whoever that person may be, we hope that it's going to be great for Ashland and great for the community. So I hope that answers your question. Did I answer all the?
Is it going to be arm's
Oh,
length?
yeah, they're all arm's length. We put them out for an RFP. We have to do it that way. We're a public entity, so it would just be like the city selling a piece of property. You would have to be arm's length as well.
Susan?
So going back to the question that I asked before, is there a timeline for the solar arrays to be installed? Because as I understand things, the argument is that it suggests that it would be soon enough that it doesn't make sense to plant trees in the meantime. Or is that just my reading? Is it an either or does the timing actually
So I think Rob
imminent?
addressed that we don't have the time frame, but really the question was new parking lot area. Yeah, I don't think the city, or at least
okay.
I didn't understand staff's comment to mean that we have to comply on existing parking lots with those new standards.
My assumption is you wouldn't be repaving those, you'd just be installing solar. So I don't think we have an issue of triggering parking lot tree requirements there. It would just be a question of if you were building a new parking lot and proposing to delay solar array installation.
So we're not anticipating new parking lot. And that was really the only question, I think, when we've had discussions with staff, is just the install of the solar array going to trigger a different set of requirements that would be in conflict with that? And then would there be a timing issue because of the funding and the delay necessarily with the solar rollout timing?
Okay. Is it true that there was no direct outreach to proximate neighbors in the way that there would often normally be in a planning process? Where neighbors within X number of square feet are
We went door to door and
adjacent
dropped
to.
stuff off.
I'm just clarifying the statement that was made earlier by a neighbor.
I think we did press releases, we put stuff up and out for a long time. We were here in April, and then we were here on your study session, and you guys notified. We've tried to be very transparent about what we've done. And in fact, we did hand do some of the neighborhood that was above Cascade, because we were doing demo at the same time. So we did do that, and we did do town halls on campus that we had many members of the community, attend and took comment from them. And I think we shared some of that at the study session related to that, so.
But there were no postcards or what are fairly standard techniques to make sure that neighbors are aware. It was PR, it was notices in the general public and so forth. No specific effort.
No, there were no postcards that were sent out.
We didn't do a mailer like with the planning commission mailer that goes out. We did do some door-to-door directly around the university that we thought would be the most impacted.
And
Okay.
staff did a full mailing. We typically don't do that on legislative action, but on this one, we did every property within 200 feet of the campus.
Oh,
Which,
that
in
was done?
addition to all the university ownership, was an additional 327 properties. So we did send a mail 20 days or 21 days before this meeting.
Before this meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric.
On the abandonment of the sign code for City of Ashland, and you come up with your own master plan, would you guys be open to maintaining Ashland sign code on Siskiyou Boulevard and Ashland Street, the more prominent streets, maintaining that as part of this change, and then going forward with just a master plan for the rest of the campus? And the reason I ask that, as you go to the digital age, what I don't want to see is a huge billboard lit up, on Siskiyou Boulevard that violates city codes, but gets more people driving in visual idea of what's going on there at the campus. So would you be willing to maintain city sign code or permit for any new signs for Siskiyou and Ashland Street?
I think what we did is we worked with staff and kind of troubleshot those kinds of issues. So we built basically a whole sign code within the master plan that wouldn't allow that kind of display. And on top of it, we've got to deal with ODOT standards that we specifically said, whatever signage is along and visible from the highway, we still have to comply with. So we dealt with some of the big display issues because that was certainly one of the questions from staff that we addressed. The rest of it is all to be consistent signage on campus, both interior and exterior.
And part of it, we put on the map literally the wayfinding signs that we want to use. We put the design in the plan in and of itself with maximums on it, so we can have wayfinding signs that are along that area, because when we have new students show up or we have families show up who are looking at the university, we want those things. We want wayfinding. We want the things that are there. Those would not be typical with the current Ashland City Code, and that's why we tried to lay that code out very specifically, and our signage very specifically, so we could do some more creative things along there, and would be limited to those things as opposed to, some big, huge digital sign. But we would like to do some things for the university, so that's why we tried to be very specific.
But Anderson Auto Body also complies with state highway codes, and it's a big, bright sign, and I think that's something, as we try to maintain the integrity of Ashland, that's something that we would like to still protect, because you do come up with a master sign plan, but the city has no control over that. You want to make changes or adjustments to it. That's within your purview?
No, the idea that the sign code baked into the master plan is the sign code, and to make changes to it, There is a provision that says we can change like the font and the lettering if we did a full reboot of the sign. But the signage, as far as maximums, as far as placements, there's a lot more detail, I think, in the university sign code than in the city sign code, really. So I think we've tried to put those parameters in. So it's not that the university gets to dictate its own sign package and create its own code. We tried to establish parameters working with staff that we thought addressed all those issues. But to change them, we would have to come back to the city.
Yeah, so through adoption of the SOU master plan, that becomes the guiding document in which any development of signs would be required. And on pages 122 through 125 or 6 of the packet, it delineates the maximum size requirements, stipulates how areas are calculated to be the furthest extent of the perimeter. It does have an allowance for reader information boards, which could be digital, as you've referenced, but stipulates a maximum height of 9 feet 9 inches for those, so that those are display features, and if they are visible from ODOT right away, that's where we would look for ODOT standards to also be applicable, so that they couldn't look like road signs or something like that. So again, this was modeled in part after our current sign code through the city of Ashland, but with recognition that things like scoreboards, reader signs, information kiosks, and building identification signs are not typical with commercial development throughout the city.
But we have worked with staff to make sure things like, any kind of signage stays out of the right of way or out of pedestrian ways. Just troubleshoot some of those real practical issues.
John?
Thank you, Chair. Can you remind me what the intended use is for the district tower or the tenants? And I think that's, is that private-public partnership, or can you just go over that?
What I would tell you is right now, there's lots of visions for what that might look like. We have not landed on a vision, and we have not put out an RFP or RFQ related to that. We even had our planning students and your staff came through, and they got to see the wide array of opportunities that were brainstormed by students too. So we have not landed on anything in particular, but we did want to notice the public that the university might be interested in a large tower that is marquee, that marks the university in the community and marks Ashland. As you travel north on I-5, that might be something that we would come propose into the future. So
just to clarify, is that intended to support the university's long-term financial viability?
Potentially.
Okay.
Potentially.
Okay.
There's lots of interest. There's a lot of people who think it could be a mixed use. If we can get funding for it, there could be mixed use opportunity where it's, where there's some moderate and low income versus some higher income. It just depends on what we think may be able to pencil and what is attractive to Ashland ultimately.
As we've talked about before, really our goal with some of these future development zones has been to lay out possibilities. If you don't allow it, if it can't possibly go taller, then the answer is no, and we're not coming back to you with a CUP saying, here's our idea, look at the architecture, look at the uses, does it fit, right? It's a hard no if it's prohibited in the code. So what we've really tried to do is do the best we can looking forward 10 years, say, how do we keep our options open and attract innovative things to Ashland rather than have it be a hard no? And if it's an opportunity, whether it's 5 stories, 7 stories, 9 stories, mixed use, we don't know what it will be, but we're just trying to keep the door open and attract the attention to have a wide-ranging open discussion. But what the parameters are, the top end of the parameter is a hard no, and we can't come back to you with a CUP at that time with a vision of something.
I'm not convinced that 9 stories and 110 feet is something that Ashland really needs. So I'm I'm more concerned with having the Walker and Ashland Street properties be similar to what the climate-friendly areas regulations that we just adopted, be consistent with that. And that, as I recall, was 50 feet allowed, 50 feet high and tall allowed, with 60 feet under a conditional use permit. Is that, do I remember that correctly?
With a conditional use permit or outright permitted at 60 feet if it contains
Affordable
25%
housing.
affordable housing.
Okay. So I'm much more interested in seeing that kind of level rather than saying you can do whatever the tallest building in Ashland is. And I think it would fit, could be a marquee, could be an entryway to the university district, that would be much more in tune and in sync with the rest of Ashland.
I guess what I would ask is to have the opportunity to come back with such an amazing looking project that I change your mind.
John? Oh, Susan?
We'd probably be happy to look at it then.
Exactly.
I'm not sure we would give away that much at this point with so much vagueness. I agree with Chairman Werner in that regard. And speaking of iconic views, the view of Ashland is the one with the Lithia Springs Hotel sticking up, not it, and then something else over here, I think. So do you have an argument? So why, other than your ability to solicit strong bids, would you argue we should approve that?
Well, I think that's really the question for the future when we come with a project, whether it's 4 stories or whether it's larger. I think I can envision some of the discussions in the future, as Croman develops, the town has the 3 nodes that we've always talked about, University District, a downtown district, and something further south. Maybe there is an iconic skyline that matches all of them. But right now, we're just imagining what could be. And this has really been the exercise of this master plan, is to carve out the areas to allow us to come back with something creative. It may be so horrible you hate it and throw me out. It could be amazing and magical, and we do want to change the skyline. Lithia wasn't there once upon a time and somehow got built and became iconic. That's, everything that was iconic today didn't exist at some point. So it's hard to tell. And that's really what we're asking for, is the opportunity to come back to you when that project takes shape.
We're not saying that that's what it's going to be. We're just saying that we'd like to have a lot of vision to be able to do that.
I understand.
And a lot of our, if you saw what our students did, a lot of them had some really cool kind of things like that. And what's their opportunity to also have vision as well. And so we'd love the opportunity to be, you're certainly going to have another bite at the apple on this thing, and the ultimate bite at the apple. So we just like to have the opportunity to envision and dream and figure that out. And if you all don't want it, then that's going to be what it is at the time. But currently that's what we'd like to be able to do. And as we're looking at density, and we're looking at less traffic, and we're looking at all those high density kinds of housing needs and other things that that cities continue to move towards, that's also the flip side of it potentially too. So I'd love to have the opportunity and vision to bring that back, and that's why the university is asking for it.
And I remember the late John Stromberg coming to the Rotary meetings saying, if we're not going to go out, we've got to go up. And this was one of the spots that he talked about it. Was that 10 years ago? Longer?
Right.
At some point, we're going to have to decide, are we willing to go up and allow people the opportunity to come and have a discussion about going up if we don't want to continue to sprawl, which Ashland has pretty clearly said we're not really interested in that kind of community.
Sure. Well, and I've lived in cities such as Bangalore that have very restrictive height limitations, but they've dealt with them in other ways. I'm just not certain this is the place to do it personally. And I feel it's I don't know, I think it's inviting proposals that do lend towards the higher height in my experience. I have one fairly specific question. In the transportation system goals, optimizing use of public transportation is not mentioned at all. Is that an oversight or was it intentional? Because it seems to me that should be a transportation system goal of all of us.
Yeah, as far as I know, we talked about utilizing public transportation, really consistent with the way we have today, offering access to RVTD, both for faculty and students. But as far as including it in the master plan, if it wasn't there, it certainly wasn't intentional. We've focused a great deal on sustainability and making that a focus of the university, both when we drafted the plan and going through TAC.
Okay. Would there still be room to add it? Or is this baked as far as you're concerned?
I don't think that would be a real substantial change. I think working to encourage access to public transportation, as a recommendation from this body would be appropriate and would be easy to accomplish.
Yeah, and we've done it and we've continued to do it. And, we work with RVTD all the time and we do bus pass recruitment and do all those things as we have onboarding with students and we bring everybody to campus. And
to the extent that it's not referenced, it's certainly not a policy change decision.
Yep.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I understand in my experience, again, if it isn't stated as a goal, then it's maybe trust me. And that's what I heard in your answer. Trust us, we're already doing it.
We'd be open to it, but we are interested in moving
Sure.
moving along too.
And I would just say also that, it's as a facilities master plan, not like a business plan for the university. We really tried to focus on what are the facility and capacity issues. So making sure we had bike parking spaces. And one of the comments from TAC that was really insightful was, where does the public use bike parking after hours if they're going to the theater building? And so we really took the time after that to address that as part of a facilities plan, similar with student housing and bike parking. So we really focused this document on the facilities and what gets built, not so much the aspirational use kinds of things.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Runner. Sorry, one last question. So it seems to me that most of the code changes that are requested are the underlying intent, obviously, is to support the implementation of the master plan, but that is based on the university's response to economic demographic changes, student enrollment changes, what you see as the future for the university, for it to go from where it is today to a new version of itself,
Hopefully.
stronger, more aligned with the market. Is that safe to say?
I think that that's true, and I think it's also true that we're taking burden off city staff that really has been kind of pro forma, some of the sign code things on individual buildings that face inside the campus, all those kinds of things we're hoping to streamline too with city staff, and that was one of our other goals as we looked at that, is to make sure we're not putting additional burden on city staff or our staff, as we all focus on, trying to be more efficient and struggle with city budgets and university budgets to try and make sure those things are streamlined and at the same time be held accountable. And so that's why we've tried to put detail in it where we feel like we've been held accountable.
One more thing that I'll pose a question about, and that's the idea that you're proposing that 70 feet be the allowed height, basically any place in the university in the Southern Oregon University District. And I don't and then something over that would be a CUP. And I again find, I'm concerned about that as well. I think it should be consistent with the climate-friendly areas policies that we just recently adopted, and that would be something like 50 feet with 60 feet allowed through a CUP, unless it's affordable housing. So I'm not sure that that, again, is, I wouldn't want to see many buildings on campus that are 70 feet and not have the city be able to review them.
I agree with that.
So do I.
Okay, any other questions for the applicants at this point? Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We will now move on to public comments, and I have several pink sheets. I will call your name, and I'll call two names, and you can, first person can come up, and second person. Do we need to take a break? Should we take a break? No? Okay. I'll call your name, I'll call one person's name, and I'll call the second person after them. And please be ready to speak. You'll have 3 minutes to speak before us. And the first person is Beth Remington, and after her is Bruce Bergstrom.
Hi, thanks for being here. I'm Beth Remington, and I have a single-family home at 333 South Mountain. That's the second house in from the corner of Siskiyou and South Mountain, and I live adjacent to the parking lot number 34. The only information I have received was from the city about tonight's hearing. I've heard nothing. I've received nothing at my home, on my door, no phone calls. I've had my home 3 years, and I've struggled with the university to take care of the very large photinia trees, not bushes, that are growing on the edge of that parking lot that are impinging on my fence with blackberries and ivy. So I've struggled already with the university. So my concern is some surveyors were out the other day, and I said, what's going on? And they said, we're surveying, so I wasn't informed about that. I said, what's possibly going in? And they said, well, it could be townhouses. So I don't have control over what's exactly going in there, but my main concerns are who decided that it was R2, how this map here says zoning if transferred R2. So I'm just curious how the zoning got designated. My biggest concern of all, well, besides light blockage and lights, is the traffic. So I have to, I back into my garage because I cannot pull into my garage head on, because if I were to pull out of my garage, there's always traffic whipping around. Not always, not in the summer, it's quiet right now, but if you ever are on South Mountain, I don't know if it's the busiest intersection in town, it feels like it, with the high school down the road and the university. And the people who are parking on our street, I can rarely park in front of my house, are people who live in the complex that's just above me, and I'm not sure if it's an 8 unit or what, but it's also university students who don't use the parking lot next door to me. On average, there's about 5 students or faculty who park there, but they all park on the street. Most of that street is painted yellow, so there actually is no parking. I'm very concerned about the safety. I don't know how big of a development is going in next door, but I really encourage you to consider doing some kind of traffic study. And as Rob mentioned just a few minutes ago, that this piece of property is already under contract. So I'm pretty disappointed in what's going on with SOU and their communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Bergstrom, and then...
My name's Bruce Bergstrom. I live at 705 Roca Street. And the first notice I got was this mailing that you mailed to us that showed that you were taking the Arboretum Park and turning it into an R3 designation. Since coming here tonight, I found out that, oh, that was a misprint. It should be an R1 7.5. I don't know what 7.5 means, but I don't know what R1 means. Okay, that's one thing. That was the only notification we've gotten on this thing. The property itself that is subject to being told is a disc golf course. And the property was originally sold by Dr. Hald, and it was developed and divided into 4 different lots. And if you look at those lots, they're real tiny. There's 2 little ones that are about 1/10 of an acre, and then there's 2 lots that are 1/4 of an acre at the bottom end of it. None of those lots, none of the access to those lots is legal. And I don't know how it ever got approved or got through the planning commission, but somehow or another, that Roca, there's a sign up there that says Roca Park, and these lots are supposed to be for sale. Well, if the university sells this thing to the public's going to buy it, and they're going to suddenly find out that they have this little flag lot coming off of Roca Street that's supposed to access 4 different lots, okay? Now, I don't think you can have a 10-foot driveway accessing 4 different lots, okay? They somehow or another did this. As they're trying to divide this thing up, they're saying there's going to be an R1 designation, zoning designation. And the R1 zoning means that there'll be 6 houses built on these lots that are available for sale. This is in, if you look at it, it's that zoning thing. And if you look at there's 4 lots that are right up next to the college property, next to Dr. Hall's house, well, his old house. I don't know who owns it now, but Dr. Hall is the one that his son divided that, and they put it up for sale, and the college bought it to be part of the Arboretum. Well, something happened with the Arboretum, and so it never got developed and it never got put in, but people donated money, lots of money, to build an Arboretum. And my accessing through the university, I've never been able to find out whatever happened to those funds that were donated for the Arboretum. And the money has just disappeared. So it either went into the general fund or something else. So there's also a deeded right-of-way on Fern Street, and that right-of-way should not become part of SOU's profit in selling this property. Okay?
Thank you very much.
That's about all I have to say.
Sydney Dreyer, and then Kathy Otoff.
Sydney Dreyer with O'Connor West LLC with offices at 670 G Street in Jacksonville. And we represent Amy and Robert Dalla, and they have a property at 668 Roca Street. Rob was mentioning that we are listed as a co-applicant. I'm really just here tonight to express support for the proposed zoning for the Roca Street properties, in particular the R175. We did get a little bit of a scare when we saw a notice saying that it was going to R3, and so I just wanted to come tonight and express support for the intended zoning, and I have nothing further.
Could you clarify where the property is, or point it out on a map or something?
It's the one lot that was sold already by the university. Is it the second one up?
It's the very top lot. This one right here. Yeah, this one, Robert, Amy, Dahlia. So it's in the edge of the zone.
Okay, so it's where the arrow's pointing.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Great, thank you.
I've looked on the map previously, but I struggle to point it out right now.
Thank you.
We can show you on this map, but I know it's not.
That'll be quicker.
This is in the packet, but it's.
It's the bottom.
It's this lot right here. That's uphill, so it would be like this, but, so it's this lot right here. It's the very top lot.
Okay, and is the
And it's outlined.
is the green,
It's
is that the?
blue with a dotted line around it, I believe.
Yeah, and that's included in the box, in the blue box.
Right, it's included in the blue box.
Okay,
But that's already been transferred and they have fee simple right to it, but it's got this underlying zone.
okay, thank you.
I'm Kathy Utoff. I live at 633 Roca Street. And my concern is that if interested people are interested in preserving the area for wildlife, golf, hiking, open space, that we're given an opportunity to form a nonprofit and do that. That if it is put out to bid, I'm afraid realtors, even though they're two very long lots that go down through the canyon, up the hill, they would buy that in hopes of putting up more than just two houses. I mean, now it's zoned R1, which is acceptable, but a realtor, if it's put out to developers, they're going to want to build more houses. And with the housing shortage in Ashland, I'm sure the city would approve a change of that. And also, it is a big wildlife corridor. The cougars and bears come down the canyon. It is often that carcasses of deer are found down in the canyon that the cougars have dragged there. In fact, they dragged a carcass to Bruce's yard. So there would be if this is all houses, there would be a definite conflict with the wildlife. And we would, people would be up in arms with cougars taking their chihuahuas or whatever. So, thank you.
Thank you. Amy Swan? And then Elise Emder? Sorry.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my name is Amy Swan, and my husband and I just bought a house on Leonard Street 3 months ago. We thought we got our dream home. We moved from a city. We both work as software engineers and are in the digital field that is growing nowadays. And I gotta tell you, all of the time that we spent not in front of our computers, we needed to be outside. We needed to be in nature for our health and for our sanity. And I know that's what our future needs too, because all of these kids now are talking about the need to be in IRL. They call it in real life, because they are so stimulated by the digital age that we have today. So this is a real mental health crisis that is concerning our future and the need for our natural spaces and conserving these natural spaces. And that's a big concern for me in terms of Roca Park. Our favorite part about our house is that it's right next to it. That's our backyard. So when we saw this house, we were thrilled that we've got deer resting in our backyard. We have turkey coming all the time. My husband's on the computer and he'll see deer and turkey walk past his window while he's on the computer. And that fills us with so much hope. and gratitude, and it's exactly the reason why we moved from the city to Ashland. We love this place. We want to preserve that beautiful natural canyon as much as we can. We don't know if the city can, I know that the university is struggling, and that's also a huge concern to us too, but I really want to see our canyon preserved for our future, for our students who really need that natural space. And I think that's the biggest point I wanted to bring up today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Elise. I live at 1280 Madrone Street. The proposed sale of the properties go from Roca Street all the way across Roca Park, down the steep slopes of Roca Canyon, across the creek, and then up to my fence line. So my fence will be touching the new property owner's property. My 5-year-old daughter plays in Roca Canyon with her friends across the way, across Roca Street. She digs in the dirt, she plays in the creek. We pick apples there in the fall, we sled there in the winter. It's a huge part of our neighborhood. And, you know, I care about the future of SOU, and I want SOU to succeed, but I wonder if there's a way that SOU can sell the properties and that we can also, as a community, maintain some of this green space that is a wildlife corridor. So I'm specifically concerned about the eastern steep slopes on the eastern side of Roca Creek. Obviously, they are unbuildable space, but they will be in these lots for sale. And so I believe that, you know, a private property could close off those trails to the public. It's not just the Frisbee golfers who uses those trails. The neighborhood uses those trails. Dog walkers use those trails. Children use those trails. And most of all, SOU students are there playing Frisbee golf. And SOU students are there enjoying that little slice of wilderness in our community. So this is also a huge loss for the SOU community who are using those areas. And so I understand that there is a conservation zone right at the creek, and I would ask the commission to consider extending the conservation zone to continue all of the steep areas where those trails are so that our community can continue to use them. And I also propose that we keep the Fern Street right-of-way because our community uses that right-of-way. We walk from Leonard Street to Roca Street, and that is, you know, a walk that I do every day and that many, many, many people in our community do every way. And so I really hope that we can find a way to conserve the wildlife corridor, which is what attracts young families to our community, to have a space in Ashland that is wild for our children and for our neighbors and all of our population to enjoy. So this is a huge loss for us, and I also think that this was this just seems very fast that SOU hasn't notified us, and the community, the resounding, you know, consensus is that the neighbors want to find a way to keep this a park. And there's no time, if they're putting these properties up for sale within 6 weeks, for the community to work together to find a nonprofit or a nature conservancy or find some other creative way to buy the land from SOU. And it really is a big deal for our community to be able to access these trails that are not just for Frisbee golfers, but that are for our whole community to walk on those trails and have access from Roca Street to Leonard Street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Jay Harrower?
Good evening, and thank you guys for your time. I guess I'm the only disc golfer that showed up here. There was a little thing put out on Rogue Valley Disc Golfer thing on Facebook 5 days ago, and everyone was going to show up, but apparently nobody did. And so, like Elise said, it's a huge community space over there, and I have played disc golf over there about 700 times over the last 4 years. I keep track on an app, and that's how I know. So I probably play more than anybody in this town over there. What I've noticed about that place is that it is a wildlife corridor. I have seen bears there. Last year I saw a mother bear and her cubs. I've seen 4 foxes in Ashland over the last 30 years since I've lived here, and twice was in Roca Canyon. So there are bears, foxes, deer. There's a group of 20 plus wild turkeys that roost in those trees at night. There's the largest redwood in Ashland, as far as I know, is on that property, as the First Lady had said. And it's a gigantic, beautiful tree. Drive by sometime and have a look at it. I see the neighbors out there all the time. I see people walking their dogs all the time. There's students that come and use the picnic table that's down by the creek. It's one of the very few creeks left in Ashland that doesn't have fences all around it. So it just felt very important for me to come and say that that canyon should be for our community, and it shouldn't be a private property with fences around it. But I think it's important that we don't take away this non-renewable resource, that it's an appreciating asset that the university could maintain. I do play disc golf there, but that's the smallest reason why I'm here. So I just want to say I love the park. I love all the people in the community that I've met and seen over there. And that's it. I just want to advocate for that beautiful little piece of land. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. And that's all the speaker request forms that I have. Does anybody else want to make some comments? Have at it. 3 minutes.
If you could request that she fill out a form so that we have a copy of it for the record.
I'm sorry I didn't fill out a form. My name's Pat Adjournment, and I just moved in here to Ashland in August, the end of August, and I live at 650 Monroe Street. My property borders one of the houses for sale, and my concern is exactly what these people are saying. I am really concerned about the disc golf area. Also, I am a teacher, and I do teach at RCC, and I teach in a building that's also owned by SOU. And I really want to support the community of SOU. I think it's a great university. However, I also did not receive any communication. So I think it's really incumbent on SOU to do a better job communicating. And I want to support all the comments of the people here, because you're giving up Roca Canyon. Roca Canyon is wonderful. We did have a bear on the street, by the way, yesterday at 5:30 in the morning. And everything that's been said about the wildlife is true. And so I think as a planning commission, you really, really, really need to look at the situation here and make sure that you're doing the right thing. I mean, we want the university to survive. RCC has the same financial problems. I've had my classes cut this summer because there's no money. So I totally understand what they're saying, but they need to do a better job communicating. Also, I have a tree that's it's on the border of, I don't know whose tree it is. Is it mine? Is it theirs? And I did communicate with them and ask them, could you please cut down this tree? It's dead. That was back in September. I have heard nothing. So I think it's very important that SOU do a better job communicating with their community. Also, I watched Cascade dorms go down. I have had no information. My property looks out on those dorms. I would not support 5 stories because, what about the traffic? What about all these things? I think we really, really need to spend a little bit more time looking at what's going on here and making sure that you make the right decision for Ashland. We moved to Ashland because it has trails, because it's a wonderful community, because of the Shakespeare Festival. Actually, because my granddaughter took a tour in her 7th grade year and wanted to come partly because of SOU. So I think that that's a great university for our community. People from RCC are going to SOU all the time, so I do support them. But I think we need to take steps that are slower and not worry about 7-story buildings, because I don't think that's what the community of Ashland wants. So thank you.
Thank you. Would you please be sure and fill out the form, the speaker request form? Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Go for it. Did you fill out the speaker request
No, I
form?
didn't fill out a form, I'm sorry. So my name's Alison Laughlin. I live at 717 Roker Street. I've lived there for 50 years. And of course that Roker Canyon place is part of my life, and all the animals, the bears, and we haven't mentioned the raccoons and the squirrels. And yeah, it's a wonderful area. And if there's any, I support us saving it. I've worked at the university. I also spent a lot of my career working at Head Start, so I have a commitment to low-income families, and I'm always concerned about low-income housing. And I know that's a challenging issue, and there have been several attempts to have developments that have requirements for low-income housing, and I understand that's all been checked. The thing that has been really successful has been those 2 Habitat for Humanity houses that were allowed. Habitat for Humanity has not been allowed to be in Ashland because Habitat for Humanity gives, you probably know this, gives equity. So they stay, when you buy a house, you can sell it, whereas Ashland requires that it stays low income. But you let Habitat for Humanity come in, and that, I think, was the one successful way to get low income housing. And so if you do some development for a small part of the canyon, do some requirement for low-income housing, because we really need that. We really need that for students. We really need that for low-income folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you please fill out the speaker request form? Thank you. Okay, so commissioners, let's see, applicant, would you like to do any rebuttal? No? Okay. So commissioners, we have several questions before us. Do you want to close the public hearing now and we would consider those among ourselves? Or do you want to keep the public hearing open and discuss the questions and be able to talk to staff and the applicant as we're doing it?
Can I ask, I had one clarifying question of the applicant. Is there a way to still ask that?
Sure.
So in the resolution that was passed by the board, there is the statement that the sale of the properties listed in attachment A may only be used to close the current year budget gap of any approved budget by the Board of Trustees and for university ending fund balance reserves. You talked about the fund balance reserves. So there, I guess because of the timing, there's no use to address the current funding gap. This was done in October of
The current
24.
funding gap was, so just like the city, we have a July 1st budget. So we have not sold any of the property for the preceding year's budget. But in the current budget environment that we have, all the funds now, at least at this point in time, are dedicated to reserves. And the board reiterated, we just had the board meeting last week, and the board passed its resolution related to doing a $5 million budget cut. And they also reemphasized that we are not to utilize those to close current gap.
Okay, thank you.
Though I don't speak on behalf of the board, but I'm just advising you.
Chair, I just want to respond to your earlier question. I personally would benefit from being able to ask the staff questions.
Okay.
I just have a few.
Okay.
You just want us to stay here in case, or you want us?
Yeah,
we
go
can
ahead.
back
No, you
and
might as well
forth,
stay
either
there.
way.
Carrie, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to go off what questions we're supposed to be discussing and talk about or add to potentially add to the master plan that there be better or required direct communication via mail with the surrounding neighborhood. I mean, often staff will request of an applicant that they go and talk to the community directly that is affected by their projects. And I know everybody's busy and it's hard to take into consideration everything, but I think SOU should be responsible for having direct communication with those people that live around the university and shouldn't count on the city's mailer or on public information systems. They should be sending out letters. So I don't know where that falls into any conversation that we're having, but if they're doing a master plan, seems to me that community communication should be part of that new master plan.
I think we can certainly talk about adding that into the master plan. And are you talking about any specific times?
Yeah, like any properties adjacent to or like the city within 200 feet of the affected areas, that they actually have to put out a letter.
Okay.
Carrie, would that be for any new buildings, sales, anything else?
Everything that they would have to, well, it should have been for what's happening right now. But I would think for anything they're going to do or propose, if they have to come to the city for a permit or come to us for a planning action, they should be reporting that and telling people in the community around them what they're doing. Then it gives people a chance to have comment. I mean, not that they can necessarily do anything about it. So I'm not saying that they should have added restrictions to their behavior, but to be a good community member is to be transparent.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
While we got an audience, I want to address a couple of things that were brought up, other questions on why properties that are being sold on Liberty Street are dedicated for R2. And to my knowledge, that's because that's the neighboring properties that are R2 also. So it makes sense that it blends right in and it's contiguous to the other R2 properties. And then also there's properties on Roca that are R1.75, and by the city's map, all of the adjacent properties are R17.52. So that's how that math works out. I do like open spaces, and I do like wildlife, and I like to recreate and all that. I want to be sensitive to SOU has allowed the public to access these properties, and because they have, and because they put a disc golf course up, they shouldn't be penalized for that. It's kind of in my opinion, kind of a gift they've allowed the public to utilize. And there were lots of comments around that, and I appreciate them. They are the owners of the property, and for the longest time, it's been a nice gift. And so if they have budget shortfalls, it's something that's why they're here in front of us today. So I just wanted to share that sentiment that we all hate losing something, but it seems like a gift that's been given for a long time. So that's all I got on that.
Okay. Brandon, there was reference made to conservation of the park and the canyon. Is there a conservation easement?
Derek can answer more. I know that we have a riparian ordinance that stipulates that development can't occur within 50 feet of the upland edge of the creek.
Uh-huh.
And additionally, our steep slope ordinance would preclude development on the steep slope portion. So in that sense, they are protected, physically constrained lands.
Okay.
That is not the equivalent of an easement for public use. Conservation easement, I'm not aware of a conservation easement on that property that allows for public access.
Okay.
It's through SOU's allowance for people to use that property.
Okay, so strictly private or SOUs again, giving property owners in the area.
Correct. The city's regulations would preclude development within immediate proximity of the creek and on steep slope areas, but they could be private properties, as throughout the city, creeks and steep slopes are often on private property
Right.
without public access.
Okay. Derek, did you have?
The only thing I would say is I think it's not a riparian stream, so it's not a 50-foot setback. It's probably intermittent, so it's probably a 40-foot center line setback.
Okay, so narrower.
Yeah, a little bit narrower.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Oh,
Sure.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So it's safe to say that the folks that are living on Leonard Street and their homes back up to this, what do you call it, riparian creek area, that they're looking at 50 feet, 75 feet before any structure would be built?
I'd have to look at it in
Yeah.
detail on a slope
Yeah.
map,
Yeah.
but I mean, they're talking at least a 40-foot buffer from the creek.
Yeah. And then the other question I have is, so I live just north of here. My HOA owns a few small pieces of property, and there are easements, I mean, obviously they're open to the public. Is this too small for that to be considered by a potential developer?
Well, typically HOA-owned common space is not open to the public. It's open to the residents of that homeowners association. If all of this property, and I'm being speculative in this case, were purchased by, if multiple parcels were purchased by one development entity, they may well propose a subdivision in order to reconfigure lot lines and establish building envelopes and establish a common open space. But again, that under city rules would not necessitate public access, although the applications that come before you, often public access easements are proposed by a developer in order to allow neighborhood access to or through their property. But again, that's a future action that would have to come before this commission. And in that action, you'd look at all the riparian areas or water resource protection areas, steep slope areas. There were comments about large statute trees. Under our requirements, any large statute tree on a vacant property is protected under a tree preservation ordinance. And as such, those would have to be preserved by future applications unless they demonstrated the tree was dying or otherwise needed to be removed.
In the middle of the buildable area?
Yeah, in which case that would be something they'd propose, but with a large site, you could look at alternative locations for buildings as part of your review process.
Sorry, just one other quick
No,
follow-up
go-
question.
go for it.
So is it possible that, well, I'm just assuming that the trail runs along the creek. I mean, I'll go down and look at it, but I'm just assuming that it does. Is it possible that the university could place an easement restriction on the sale so that there, at least local residents, maintained access to the creek trail? Yes. I'm just looking for, like, is there a compromise here?
I think that's probably a question for the applicant. Private property owner can grant a public access easement across their property, but it would be an encumbrance on the property.
Do you want to ask them?
Not particularly. I just want to know if it's possible.
If it's possible, okay.
And then I guess I just have one last question. Oh, there's something about a right-of-way. Would that also require an easement to maintain the right-of-way?
So the Fern Street right-of-way is a remnant when it was platted initially, was the intention to connect Fern Street from Roca all the way over to Leonard Street. Given grade issues, it's clear through the Public Works Department that that road connection is not going to occur. But the process for vacation of a public right-of-way does involve the Public Works Department taking an application both before the Planning Commission and the City Council to grant the vacation of that right-of-way, in which case a right-of-way would then go to adjacent property owners. In this case, it goes through the center of SOU property. So that is a separate legislative discussion on vacation of right-of-way. And at that point, the City Council or Planning Commission could look at pedestrian connectivity through that right-of-way. if that could be maintained within the area to be vacated.
And where we vacated Fern Street elsewhere in its length, we've maintained a pedestrian access easement.
Go ahead. I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Herron's comment. So while I agree with in principle, what I believe should not be forgotten about this particular situation is the commitment that was made, or apparent commitment many years ago, that this would be an arboretum, including fundraising for the arboretum. So to me, that kind of reshapes the argument, because people bought property, continued to make investments in their property, et cetera, in a belief that is now, no longer going to exist, it seems.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Werner. I just have a quick clarifying question for staff. These lots on Roca Street, should they sell, they still have site restraint conditions on them, steep slopes. There's a creek, it sounds like, where you can't build 40 feet from the center line of the creek, and then also this large redwood tree that likely, due to city regulations, wouldn't be able to be removed. And so I just want to make sure that the people here understand that there are numerous ways that those areas around the creek are going to be protected in perpetuity. Even if the lots sell, that will remain basically raw land in those areas around the creek and where the steep slopes are.
That's correct. It wouldn't necessarily guarantee access, but it would preserve that property.
Great, thanks, Derek.
Okay, so should I go ahead and close the public hearing? Okay, go for it.
Sorry, I missed this part about the flag lot access. So these lots off of Roca that have the flags, because they are legal lots, it means that they are buildable. And I heard a question earlier from one of the gentlemen about them being illegal lots or buildable lots, and I just was hoping you could provide some clarification on that.
Yeah, the lots that as exist, and this is on the southernmost portion or the northernmost portion of the Roca Park area, there are 4 lots accessed off of a platted flag drive. Typically, the platted flag drive for flag lots is not the full extent of a driveway. A driveway can be accommodated both on the platted flag lot and on shared access easements through the adjacent properties. So essentially, lot 1 would be providing a portion of its property to serve lot 2. Lot 2 would serve lot 3. So that obviously development of that property would have to meet standards for setbacks, those requirements. I would note that the city of Ashland does not have any parking requirements at all. And so technically driveways are not a requirement for development of housing, although we all know that the market is such that building a new home on a lot, people will want to have a driveway with auto access. But it can be accommodated within a platted flag lot or within shared easements through adjoining properties.
How wide does that driveway have to be? 15 feet paved?
It served 3 lots. I believe it's 15 feet. 2 lots, it's 12 feet. 1 lot is 9 feet. So on lots that serve multiple flag lots, it gets smaller as you go further to the furthest lot.
Further in?
Those dimensions correct?
9 feet paved in a 12-foot, 12-foot paved in a 15-foot,
Yeah.
and 15 in a 20, depending on the number of lots
Okay, so it's larger, closer to the street.
Yeah, it's serving. If a flag lot is serving multiple lots, it's wider, and then as you get to the last lot served, it usually truncates down to 9 feet or so of paved.
Go for it.
Did you have anything else? Follow up? Go for it. You got follow up? Go for it.
I was just wondering if we should go through the questions before we close the public hearing, because we haven't really stepped on
Right,
all of the open discussion items.
I have one on the parking lot standards. If they were to do solar, I haven't seen all those parking lots. I've seen a lot of them. Parking lot standards have changed quite a bit over the last 20 or 30 years, and a lot of it has to do with stormwater retention and bioswales. I mean, don't you think this is a significant enough improvement? There will be trenching all the way through the parking lot, large bases for foundations for these structures to set on. That would be a prime opportunity to treat the stormwater that's produced by the parking lot, which is also could be argued that has as great of an environmental impact as solar energy does itself.
Yeah, I think they're likely to need to disrupt some of that parking area in order to install these, but it's not new impervious surface, so it wouldn't change the drainage requirement. It may be an opportune time to deal with site drainage, but my assumption is it wouldn't trigger a requirement that they add new drainage facilities.
I know it's late.
No, I'm just yawning.
Assuming one developer doesn't buy the entire property, assuming this all goes through, and they don't redraw the lot lines, they would submit a proposal for that, right? Could you, or would we accept 0 lot line development on those tiny 1/10 of an acre lots? I mean, could a developer hypothetically buy those 3 small parcels and propose 3 small 0 lot line residences? Or would the
For
setbacks
lots
apply?
that are 5,000 square feet in size, a 0 lot line is not necessary for development of a single-family home by any means. Typical lots within Ashland are this size or smaller.
Yeah, I just looked at some of the neighboring lots. They're that size too, and they have houses on them.
Okay, so shall we walk down through the 6 questions that we've been asked?
Yes.
Okay, should we do it in open meeting, or should we do it with the public hearing closed? You want the ability to ask the applicant and ask staff as we go down through these?
I would suggest we leave the hearing open while we move through these, just in case something comes up.
Okay. So the first one is within 50 feet of private property, any project that's within 50 feet of private property is subject to a conditional use permit now, and their applicant is requesting that it be subject to a type 2 site design review procedure. And the CUP is more, well, I'll characterize it as being more, I think it's more, it gives the residents and neighbors more of a chance to raise issues as opposed to a type 2 site design, which is fairly specific in terms of the criteria that we have to walk down through to get to a decision. So does that difference make a difference to you? Or are you willing to forego neighborhood, neighbors being able to raise issues in lieu of having maybe an easier process or less discretion? I'm sorry, that's coming across as being very, I'm biased. Do you, what's your feeling on the conditional use versus type 2 site design?
I have some.
Sure, go ahead.
So CUP not only gives the neighbors potentially more input, but it actually gives us more ability to question and morph the plan in a way that, so it gives us more flexibility of input as well. So I think there's some value in it.
Okay, so anybody else? Russell?
Yeah, just a quick question. On the other side of the coin, does it allow a more streamlined process for development? And is SOU able to more quickly carry out, projects that they're interested in doing?
I would turn to staff in terms of the timing.
I don't think it streamlines the process that much. It's, probably a CUP is also going to be a type 2 public hearing for a new building. So really what it does with kind of the same procedural timeline is it just gives more clarity. So it's a question of clarity versus, compatibility and a little more discretion.
And if I could elaborate mainly for the audience, the distinction between a site review and a CUP. In both cases, the city sends notice to everybody within 200 feet. In both cases, they come before the Planning Commission for review and decision. And in both cases, the commission is going through criteria of approval in evaluating those applications, and neighborhood input affecting those criteria could be considered. The primary distinction is that with a conditional use permit, an applicant is in a position to demonstrate things like neighborhood compatibility with, again, a university development. For instance, the athletic center is not necessarily compatible with the historic pattern of development of single-family homes. And so I think it's that type of criteria that the university was looking at, having the master plan identify those future uses, and once approved, not have to be subject to that evaluation at part of the current planning application. But again, you haven't closed the public hearing, so I can't answer on behalf of the university, just what I've read in the plan.
Thanks, Brandon. And was the athletic center approved using a conditional use permit or
I believe because it was set far enough back from the right of way that it was through a site review.
a site review?
So then I'll use the dining hall as a different
I
example.
mean, it's probably why it was set back that far.
Okay.
Carrie, did you have another question?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I thought my mic was off. No.
Okay. So do we want to reach a consensus now, or do you want to do that after the public hearing is closed? I guess technically it's probably deliberations, so we probably ought to wait until after the public hearing's closed. Okay, so we'll move to the second one. Is the commission comfortable with exempting solar arrays over parking lots from land use review when they meet specific criteria? So this was, I think the applicant was saying that solar arrays on existing parking lots, that they do plan to put solar arrays on existing parking lots. They're just not sure of the timing. And so the question is, are you okay with that being a staff decision? Sure.
Who defines the specific criteria?
For what?
Those are the things that were called out in the master plan and that we put in the ordinance draft in front of you, which would be,
Okay.
if they're consistent with the designs illustrated, not exceed 25 feet, don't impair vehicle access, comply with the solar ordinance where they have private property to the north, and get permits.
Okay, so those are those specific criteria.
And consistent with the illustration.
Okay, great. I should have said which specific criteria. Thanks.
I would generally be in favor of this. with exempting the solar arrays from land use review.
Okay. So I'm noting it's 9:27 and we have a deadline of 9:30. So we need a motion to continue.
I'd move to continue the public meeting for a half hour
Until 10 o'clock?
till
Is there a second?
10 o'clock.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue our meeting till 10 o'clock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we're moving on. What about height? Are you generally in favor of the height as proposed by the applicant, which would be saying that most structures would be 4 stories, the cascade replacement would be 5 stories, and the University District property at Walker and Ashland could be up to 9 stories or 110 feet? Or are you, or do you think it should be lower than that? And then a corollary of that is any building, is the applicant's proposing to change the height that would, of a building that would require a conditional use permit and have it be 70 feet? And do you think that is acceptable as opposed to having a lower height? Currently 40 feet is the trigger for a conditional use permit.
I think they should be held to the same standard as the climate-friendly areas. And then if they want to go over that 60 feet, it's a CUP. Or 50 feet, and that's a CUP.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree with Carrie, and then also, or Commissioner Kincaid, and then also I am maybe in the minority, but in favor of the tall building that could be up to 9 stories or 110 feet on the corner of Ashland Street and Walker Avenue. I think it provides a unique economic opportunity for Ashland, and given the right proposal, it could be something really neat for our town.
I think there's danger in putting that in, like, if they have to get a CUP to go over, I think is it 50 and then maybe to 60 and then to go up, that's just part of the process. And you can say you're in favor of them going 110 feet, but that's not, we're not approving anything right now. So we don't have a proposal in front of us. So to say, yeah, if you brought that to us, we wouldn't be in favor of it, I don't think that that's appropriate somehow. And I don't know the proper words for that, but.
And I think I agree with that, Commissioner Kincaid. I think that I would hate to close the door before the process even began, though.
Sure, but we're not. We're saying it's a CUP.
I can agree with that, yeah.
Okay, so next one is, does the commission support exemption from maximum parking requirements for the Cascade development or the University District sites?
My sense is the applicant had sort of said that they would not really need to go over maximums.
Okay,
So the maximums would remain.
okay, so we don't need,
Derek, could you start using your mic, please?
Yes, I can. I said that the applicants had indicated they really didn't need to have exemption from the parking maximums.
Great.
okay, the next one is the, are we okay with the exemption from parking lot standards? Based on the fact that the applicants talked about putting solar arrays in parking lots? Or do we think that they're, I'm thinking we're talking about new parking lots here, that, or do we?
Yeah, that's what confused me.
Yeah, so a little clarification. I think that they would like to, parking lot design requirements will not be will not be triggered by new solar parking lot treatments, but new parking lots would still need to meet requirements for new parking lot design standards.
And so they either put in trees at time of building it, or they put in a solar array at that time.
Correct.
Okay. And then, does the commission support exempting the university from tree removal permit process, similar to, like the exemption that's granted to the Parks Department?
I would defer to Commissioner Kincaid on this.
I think that the university is interested in keeping their canopies where they can. I don't see this as a negative. They're just trying not to have to go through the city process to remove trees, and they are managing their own campus. So I am supportive of them having control over their management of their trees.
But you suggested that the word licensed be included.
Well, yeah, because to say arborist staff or contract doesn't say what it is. It's like it's a licensed arborist. And so they agreed that that was supposed to be, it's either in their master plan language or it will be.
It's in their master plan, I read it.
Is it?
It says license.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's presently not in the draft ordinance as presented, so
Ah.
if that is the direction of the commission, that can be added.
Okay.
And then quick question, should it be licensed for both staff and contract or
Yes.
just? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and close the public record. What?
Where does the
Where,
addition?
where does the zoning fit in? I mean, that was the major discussion point today, and it's, oh.
Yeah.
Is there,
And I'd like to know where the idea of having a different public noticing process be part of the master plan, where that goes. Or if anybody else is supportive of that, I guess.
I was thinking we could add that as part of our, whoever makes the
Conditions.
motion.
I agree, yeah.
that Would be
Okay.
a added condition.
I don't think we have, do we have conditions of approval in the standard way on this?
Not in the standard way. We're going to, well, I'm envisioning that somebody's going to make a motion and go down through these 6 things that we just discussed and state what our preference is, and we can add to that a statement that our preference is that they do better communications.
Include a standard for neighborhood communication, yeah.
Yeah.
Not better.
Okay, so now I'm going to close the public hearing, right? Okay, close the public hearing, close the public record. And we are now into deliberations. So, do we need to talk some more about particular ideas or things we want to have them include? Or is somebody ready to make a motion?
Can you just, thank you, Chair. Can someone just indicate what page on the summary of the specific applicant's requests? Because I'm having trouble finding it in the back. 26, thank you,
Page
sorry.
26 is what I'm referencing. Susan?
I guess. Maybe I need to ask my question differently. These specific questions are derived, it seems, from the specific considerations.
Yes.
Which include zoning if transferred map.
So the zoning that's being proposed is the zoning that matches the neighborhoods that they're in, so.
That's, would be logical for us to continue that zoning on those properties and
Right.
not
guess
get
my-
into spot zoning, which is a no-no.
Do you want to see this?
I understand that. What I don't understand is why it's not a specific question because it was the biggest discussion point, and that's basically my question. That the zoning, if transferred map, we were not asked on page 26
To talk about that.
to talk about it.
Right. And you're right, it did come up tonight, and I heard several people say, our notice originally said it was gonna be R3, but I heard tonight it's gonna be R1, and I'm okay with that.
And I heard the same thing, that was when people wrote in, and the original concern when they got the notice was that the zoning up on Roca was going to be an R3 zoning, high, multifamily, high-density residential. But in fact, it is slated to be zoned an R1-7.5 if it's sold and transferred outside of SOU.
But I didn't hear a single person say that they were in favor of that, other than the applicants.
Well, I did hear actually some.
Oh,
of the-
one, yeah.
Well, I would say they made an inflection. They said, now that I know that, I'm less concerned. That's what I heard from the applicants.
Yeah,
mean,
I did too.
I mean, we could take a poll, but.
I have a quick question here. We were talking about the building heights, and I think what I heard us say earlier is that any building over 50 feet would require a conditional use permit approval. Is that where we were landing on that?
I think what we were talking about was matching the
CFA.
wording in the climate-friendly areas language.
So it would be then with a maximum size in alignment with the transit triangle CFA building height allowance. Perhaps.
Yes, or a CUP, and then a CUP beyond that.
After that.
Okay, and then a CUP over, is it?
For
Yeah,
over 50 feet.
for over 50 feet, okay.
Is it stat, I know you can go to 60 feet in the climate-friendly areas plan, and I don't know if that's a CUP to go from 50 to 60.
I think it has to do with whether it's affordable housing
Right, so it's the
involved.
addition of affordable housing. So I think that,
Brandon's
So
gonna
the
answer.
two standards to consider as you deliberate, existing SOU stipulates anything over 40 feet, and it doesn't give a maximum height, can be processed through a CUP. The proposed, as you talked about, was 70. The climate-friendly area is up to 50 feet is outright permitted, or up to 60 feet is outright permitted if it contains affordable housing, which is a public benefit. If it's over 50 feet and does not include affordable housing, it requires the CUP up to 60 feet in the climate-friendly area. But again, that's not the allowance to go over 60 feet in any circumstance.
and
So
I think that they need a CUP to go over 60 feet. So that's the gift, if you, for lack of a better term, is that they can go over 60 feet, but otherwise we meet that other criteria.
And then would we be creating any caps on the height?
Well,
Well, we probably should put a cap on it, just,
well, they're saying they want to be able to go 110 feet, so you want to put a 110-foot cap on a CUP?
And then can we limit it to the corner of Ashland Street and Walker?
Yes,
At that
yes.
height?
I don't see why not.
yeah, we can. You sound like you're ready to make a motion.
I'm almost there.
Yay.
Like an acreage limit on that corner or something? I mean, how are we going to define on the corner?
That's a great question.
Or the property bounded by Walker, Ashland, Stadium Street, and Webster Street. It's got streets on all four sides.
That does it.
Go for it.
All right, I move that the Planning Commission recommends to the Ashland City Council adoption of the proposed 2025 SOU Master Plan Amendment, including the zoning for transferred properties, zoning map amendments, and that the commission articulate the following desired adjustments to the master plan or associated codes and maps. Number one, any project within 50 feet of private property would be subject to a conditional use permit with notice to properties within 200 feet, a public hearing before the Planning Commission, and the potential for an appeal to the City Council. Number two, exempting solar arrays over parking lots from land use review when they meet specific criteria. Number three, to allow the proposed height allowances in the master plan. Most structures would be 4 stories. The Cascade replacement would be 5 stories, and the University District property at Walker Avenue and Ashland Street, also bordered by
Stadium Street.
Stadium Street and Weber Place.
Webster
Place.
Street. Sorry.
Could be up to 9 stories or 110 feet. Any building with a maximum, or let's see here.
I don't think we said that. I don't think we
We
agreed.
didn't say that.
That that it could be up to 9 stories or 110 feet.
Well, I said you were wanting to put a maximum on it of 9 stories or 110 feet, and otherwise it must meet 50 foot outright, 60 foot with a CUP and affordable housing.
Correct.
Would it maybe be easier to say consistent with
CFA
the CFA, Ashland CFA requirements?
regulations.
Okay, so with the maximum height and alignment with the Ashland CFA allowances, and then a conditional use permit over 50 feet.
Different order, I think it should say that you align it with the CFA for height. And then anything over that height requires a CUP up to 110 foot max.
Okay, let's use that language. Allow maximum parking standards to remain,
Let's not even mention that.
okay. Parking lot design requirements will not be triggered by new solar parking lot treatments. New parking lots would still need to meet requirements for new parking lot design standards. For proposed buildings with gross habitable floor area of 15,000 square feet or more, will automatically trigger a type 2 site review. Allow the university to be exempt from the tree removal permit process by using a licensed arborist on staff or a licensed contract arborist. Allow adoption of the new sign code into the SOU master plan. Create a standard of direct communication with neighborhood that will be within 200 feet by any proposals, new buildings, sales, or master plan updates.
I think that it could be simplified to say anything that would be, well, never mind, that's great.
And finally, the SOU district should be recognized in AMC 10.3.6 as being subject to the Water Resource Protection Zones ordinance.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded.
Well done.
Thanks, Russell.
That was great, Russell.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion on any of that? Was it clear? I'm looking at staff.
It's clearly recorded, so we'll go back and read it verbatim for the minutes.
Okay, all those, Michael, will you call a roll?
Commissioner Kincairn,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Herron,
Yes.
Commissioner McCracken-Jones.
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Marr.
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, we have made a motion and adopted it, and thank you all very much. We have open discussion. Anybody have anything to talk about? Go for it.
I just want to say that in reading the plan, the spirit that came across in the plan, actually, I thought was very positive and admirable. It was the details that I, personally had to work through. So thank you for your patience with that.
Yes, details are everything. But thank you all for your time and energy and coming back to us again and again.
Did you get your grant that you were waiting on, 10 o'clock?
Delivery.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again for coming back and best of luck.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 9:48. Well, I think it's the longest one we've had. Really? I think so.